Hey there, I'm John Hayes, and thanks for joining us for this episode of the Founders Trust podcast. Today, we're discussing how new founders can approach the beginning of their startup journey. I spoke with my good friend, Aimee Venot, a serial entrepreneur, a tech whiz, and just one of the most helpful founders I've ever met. Aimee and I discuss her path as a founder, holding yourself accountable, the benefits of accelerator programs, and a whole lot more. So I'm really excited to share Aimee's terrific advice with you. And stick around to the end of the episode for a free business idea for an AI startup that you can start building today. All I ask is that you give us a shout out when you raise that first round of funding. So let's jump right in. Today's Startup Spotlight is brought to you by Savier. Savier takes a personalized approach to helping entrepreneurs create a clear path to growth. Through knowledge, coaching, and marketing services, Savier helps entrepreneurs and small business owners apply marketing to achieve their business goals. At Savier, our goal is to empower entrepreneurs to achieve marketing success. Check them out at Savier, that's savvyeur.com today. Hey everyone, thanks for joining us for another episode of the Founders Trust podcast. So excited to have my good friend, fellow entrepreneur, Aimee Venot here with me today. Aimee, thanks for joining us. I feel like I've learned so much from you in our work together in the Founder Institute on the tech side, on what it means to take an idea, have a vision for it, and execute it. So excited to have you on today to talk a little bit more about your entrepreneurial journey and ultimately how we can help founders get started, right? Because that's always the most overwhelming part.
Oh, well, thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it. It's so fun to hop on here and talk about what new ways for entrepreneurs to start. It's craziness. I guess I should start talking about introducing myself. So I would consider in college really my first entrepreneurial experience. I took a leadership role in a business organization and never looked back. It's something that I've always been really passionate about, mostly just growing something from nothing to something. And so after college, I started my first corporate job, was starting to feel that corporate grind, and looked for new opportunities that I could really take something and make it. So from there, I started with a basic blog. I started with my best friend. We launched a small blog called Cozy and Clee, which was just an Instagram blog that talked about companies all around the Cleveland area and promoting it, whether it be food or new workout experiences. And in 6 months, we launched over 10,000 followers, launched a website, and really just wanted to try our knack at marketing. I've always considered myself more on the tech, finance, hard, those types of skills, and never really on the creative side, and wanted to see, like, could I make it? And really a lot of good learnings. And then from there, started other initiatives that were like more just side cash, whether it be Etsy shops or random print on demand sites, and transitioned formally to filing my first B corporation, which is StreetTalk, which is how John and I met.
That's right.
And we met through the Founders Institute. And I do think it is a good place for first-time entrepreneurs to start any kind of like leadership, entrepreneurship program, and did that and have, continued learning and growing and developing and trying new companies on the side and see what sticks, and if not, abandon fast. And meanwhile, still working at my corporate job.
You have such an awesome story, because I think you're the quintessential person with the entrepreneurial itch, right? Just finding something you're interested in, jumping into it, developing the skills that you need for it, right? Like you talked about, you came from more of a tech background, finance background, but really picked up the marketing side. And I remember you, when you'd pitch in our weekly sessions, you had such passion for not only StreetTalk, but you had such a great way of being able to craft the message that you were able to deliver. So I think the testament to you as an entrepreneur, and I know that everyone, makes progress and grows as an entrepreneur along the way. So when you were first starting out, what were some of the things that were most difficult about being in that type of sort of unstructured role? And how did you overcome that or learn to deal with those things in constructive ways?
Yeah, so I definitely think there are two major things that will make you successful as an entrepreneur. The first one, and I tell almost every person that's thinking about their journey, is documenting the reason why you want to be an entrepreneur. It has to be somewhere that you're going to see it pretty much every day, whether it be your phone background or just like on your laptop or on your notebook that you use and write all your to-do tasks. But being honest with yourself about why you want to doing it, why you're doing it. It could be purely financial. I think we kind of shame that, and that is a main driver of wanting to be an entrepreneur. It could be sexier reasons, like I want to travel the world and work in every area code. But there can be real reasons, like I just want to be home for dinner with my family. And
sure.
if I have my own company, that way I can do it. And so I think being honest with yourself and feeling that freedom and writing that down is the first step to entrepreneurship. For me, I know a pivotal moment in my career, which I mentioned in college, was I had a professor, and she had a long background in a really big corporation, and she grew in the corporate ladder. And she looked me dead in the eyes one day. I remember her saying, Aimee, you can either have a family or you could have a career. But if you're doing corporate America, you'll never have both. And I remember thinking in my head, like, I'm not a spiteful person, but game on. And I think one of the main reasons why I did entrepreneurship is because I knew I wanted to have a way to support my family, and still be at the dinner table day in and day out. And that to me is, I have it written on my phone. I look at it pretty frequently. And that's what keeps me motivated and why I'm constantly driving towards the next innovation. And so being honest with yourself.
It's that flexibility, right? That control over your own schedule. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think everyone has a different reason. And I think everything is valid. You want new challenges. You want to be able to not be your own boss. Like, I think there's a lot of validity with what your background is. And to me, that was something I really, really valued. So I think the second thing is, once you know why and you feel confident and you're owning it and rocking it, I think holding yourself accountable. Like I said, for me, I can do the tech stuff. I love thinking through product innovations, but the marketing part was really, really hard for me, and the legal stuff. I mean, you can read blog after blog, but if you don't like legal stuff, you're never going to read blog after blog. And so one of the things and the reason why I joined the Founders Institute was that I wanted to be surrounded by people that were either experts in those pieces of the fields or have resources available to me to help. And so holding yourself accountable. And if there's areas that you don't like, try to outsource them. That's why there are so many opportunities like Fiverr and Upwork. That's why these exist. So you can outsource at a pretty discounted rate depending on where you want to find those savings. So I really think accountability is the second piece, because finding something that you're passionate about, there could be a variety of things you could be passionate about, but finding someone to keep you accountable is so important, especially when the idea is like not even really there.
And Aimee, how did you go about kind of building that accountability? Because it can be really difficult as a solo founder. When you're controlling your own schedule, you're setting your own hours, you're really answering to yourself in terms of a lot of deliverables. And how did you go about putting some structure in place, but then also maybe just developing accountability habits that really helped you grow and be more productive?
Yeah, that's a great question. So for me, I always set time, like certain hours of the day. So throughout my whole experience as an entrepreneur, I'm a pretty risk averse person. So I'll continue to have a full-time corporate job and still do my side work, but still consider it a really big part of who I am and my identity. So every day at 6 to 8, I'll typically work on it. And then on Saturdays, I would work from, I don't know, when I wake up at 9 till about 3. And I think a lot of it has to do with just setting yourself up for success, whether you're more of a morning person, so you want to put your best hours put there, if you want to spend your full day, but writing down a schedule, like I said, the accountability piece is really having it written down. I also, prior to the pandemic, loved going to coffee shops. I probably visited them all over the city. Part of that just because I really like the ambiance of seeing other people work and kind of feeling that I could continue doing it myself. So I think those are just a few ways, but I'm curious, what do you do? What's kind of the thing that gets you a little bit more structure?
Yeah, for me, something similar in terms of really defining my blocks of time, right? And I think, understanding that setting aside certain time to be able to take care of health, physical fitness, cooking for the week, right? Being very deliberate with time blocks and understanding that when I'm in the zone for that, purpose for that time block, that's all I'm working on, right? There was some great advice I heard, and I think being an entrepreneur has really forced me to be more organized. It's just something I would not say was a strength of mine in the past. As that seems to be a theme for many entrepreneurs. But for me, some great advice I heard because I was doing so many things was, multitasking is not doing multiple things at 80%. It's doing something at 100% while you're in it and putting everything else out, and then you move on to the next thing, do 100% there, move on, right? It's not something where you're trying to sacrifice your functionality or your effectiveness for each thing just to get a bunch of stuff done. And that also raises a question of making sure we're evaluating ourselves and whether we're doing too much, because there's certainly been times in the past where I have. So I try to be really deliberate, give 100% to just what I'm doing in that time block, and then you move on and you put out the other stuff aside. And I've found that that's really helped me over the past few years and kind of in this journey. So one thing I think we've talked a little bit about in the past, and we've talked about this in the Founder Institute as well, is you touched on it. You want to fail fast, you want to act fast, learn quickly. Sometimes entrepreneurs, especially first-time ones, are so focused on getting something right or getting something perfect or having it fit their exact vision for what they want their messaging to be or their product to be, that they never, they keep pushing things back, right? It doesn't get done on time. Maybe it doesn't get launched at all. What are your thoughts on an approach to managing this obsession with having everything be perfect?
Yeah, there's a great book out there. It's called Finisher, I believe, by John Acuff. Strongly suggest it. Really, he talks about how perfectionism, it just kills creativity. And I am definitely a recovering perfectionist as well. And I think just being honest with yourself of things that you, one, like I said, what you don't like to do, or two, the things that you're constantly stalling on, chances are they're not your strengths. I know I've heard of a lot of like artists, small businesses where they're like, I hate writing back to customers. It's not that I don't care about my customer, it's just I don't like it. And that's because they're artists, right? Like that organization may not be their strength. And so to that, you may sacrifice some on the cost short term, but long-term happiness, being able to outsource areas that you just don't think you're the subject matter expert in is really liberating. I know I talk to a lot of founders who aren't from a tech background, and they start learning like all the inner workings of how to build a website, or even furthermore, like really detailed like algorithms, spinning up new product lines. And they spent so much time learning this thing, which is awesome. But if they're not interested in it, they're not going to want to do it long term, and they'll just get frustrated and give up. And so rather than give up, identify those areas, outsource as much as you can, and then really focus on the parts that you can control and that you think that your spin on it is going to take your product from good to great, because those details are really what may differentiate you in the market compared to your competitors.
See, I appreciate that, Aimee. I think that's some of the best advice that we've gotten on the show so far, because a lot of times, especially early stage, you're thinking, okay, I need to save costs, I need to learn how to do it myself. And yes, you certainly need to be familiar with how these things work, right? So that it's consistent with the vision and the business model and everything that you're building. But ultimately, if you're slowing up the progress and don't get it to where you need to go because your own knowledge or lack thereof is the limiting factor, ultimately you're doing your company a disservice. So the outsourcing piece, I think, is really key. And sometimes people think, oh, I'm saving on costs in the short term, but really you're sacrificing progress, right? So that's terrific advice, and I really appreciate that, and I think many founders will as well. You mentioned kind of the structure and of an accelerator program like Founder Institute and how that kind of helped you learn some of these things. Ultimately, what did you feel? How did you feel coming into an accelerator program like the Founder Institute, as not necessarily a first-time founder, but maybe the first kind of tech company you were building? How did that structure really help you grow and kind of take that next step in terms of your full understanding and experience as a founder and everything that entails?
Yeah, so I think there's a few things that I really was looking for. I think the Chicago community for founders is rather small, so I wanted to build up my network. I think that was the first thing. I wasn't sure about grad school, if that may be a good option for me, because there's definitely great opportunities for MBAs. But I wanted to kind of fail fast if I wasn't going to like it. So decided to sign up. I looked at all the different incubators. Some were really early stage, some were later stage. I knew I was somewhere in the middle. And so I found founders, applied, and it was the right fit for me. I think what they really double down on is presenting and articulating your vision concisely and clearly. If you aren't familiar with founders, essentially every week you go in front of a panel of judges that have had successful businesses and you pitch for 5 minutes what your product vision is, what makes you different, and all those different things. And they essentially roast you week after week, and you get used to failure. And so that was something that, as a recovering perfectionist, I had to learn to deal with and move on, take constructive criticism, and iterate. And so that was really helpful for me. I think the structure, we had a lot of scheduled prompts. It could be like, get your corporation founded, figure out how you're going to do your equity shares with your second founder, or if you're going to hire your first COO. All that information is super interesting. You can definitely find it on the internet, but I wasn't structured, and I knew that about myself, that I was going to need the help. So for me, those were some of the key reasons why I did it. And I really liked it. I mean, I still keep in touch with a variety of people on it. Obviously, John, trying really focused on how do we get our companies off the ground and have like-minded, and having that structure to put down pen to paper areas that you always thought of and you thought you knew. But when you put it in writing, like I said, I think countless times already, it's just really refreshing and revitalizing.
I think this podcast has become an unofficial endorsement. Well, I'll officially endorse it right now of the Founder Institute program. We have so many guests that come from the program. Obviously, that's where we first met each other, and it's been such a, as you touched on, the Chicago entrepreneurial community is small, but it's dedicated and it's supportive. Yeah. And I think a early pre-seed accelerator like the Founder Institute really helps lay the groundwork for a lot of those relationships. And it's certainly all the benefits you mentioned certainly were a part of my experience as well. And a big part of that accelerator was the mentorship, right? And access to mentors, investors, professionals who had been in our shoes even just a few years before, right? How did you take advantage of kind of the mentorship aspects, and how did you connect with people who were ultimately able to maybe open some doors for you as you were growing your company?
Yeah, absolutely. So there were a few mentors that I really fell in love with when they would speak, and contacted them, or they came and approached me. They really resonated with my vision. They gave me initial offers for parts of the company just so that I would continue. I had a few offers to quit my full-time job. It was just, I mean, it does positively reinforce that what you're doing day in and day out is the right vision. And there's definitely people that are like, hey, like, I don't believe in your vision. That's okay too. And so I think that, to me, I love the mentorship available, even things like tactile things. For me, how do I file a B Corp? I don't even know a lawyer. I don't have a friend in the family that's a lawyer. Oh, here's the 4 lawyers we suggest, and here's the price point you need. If they charge this, like, you should push back. How would I supposed to know if I didn't do one of these types of programs without having that guidance? So definitely from like strategic things where they push me in different directions, or, hey, did you think about how you can monetize in this form or fashion? Really helpful. And I really don't think I would have had that on my own just by Googling.
You touch on the tough skin aspect of it, from the feedback that you get. And I think for me, and I think for you and other founders as well, that certainly was one of the impacts or benefits I will always remember, right? You sit there, you give your pitch, and the reality is that some people just aren't familiar with your space, or aren't familiar with your business model, your idea, or they're just simply not going to like it. But the reality is, it was such great prep work for being able to go pitch to an investor, a strategic partner, a key hire, right? And I think that was one aspect that we'll all remember. Perhaps fondly, perhaps not, but as a very beneficial, aspect of being a part of the program. Aimee, from your experience and kind of reflecting on your time with StreetTalk, Founder Institute, speaking with other entrepreneurs, are there any unexpected aspects of being a founder that people really need to understand before they jump in and take on that type of role? Was there anything you wish someone had told you before you started your entrepreneurial journey?
Yeah, I think, coming from a tech background, I never realized how much you had to sell. I think I thought if I had a great idea, people would follow. Not the case. You really need to be able to quickly articulate why your work matters and how you're going to change the world in one way or another. And if you are able to sell them within an elevator pitch, truly, then that will make you go far. You can sell really anything if you're able, if you can make anything work if you can be able to sell it. And so to that, I didn't realize even like a color scheme can really transform the way people think of your brand. You could sell like a variety of different things. So I definitely think it's one that I will always think about, and something that I'm thinking about day in and day out for little things, minute things. And I think it helps not even just with entrepreneurship, but with your life. How do you pitch it? How do you package it up and to make it exciting experience for everyone?
Yeah, that's a great point. How do you make yourself or your ideas compelling, right? Or, convince people to follow, where you want to go, for sure. For sure. Well, I mean, this has been tremendously helpful. And I know our founder listeners think so as well. Want to finish up with our 3-question grand finale here.
Cool.
If there's one book or blog or information source that you'd recommend founders check out to really understand where to get started, what would that be?
Oh gosh. So my favorite, I would say, business book as a whole is actually an audiobook. I never sit down for books. It's an audiobook. It's called, from Brené Brown. It's called The Power of Vulnerability. I think this book, I know it's if you haven't listened to it, it really does talk about how to make yourself vulnerable, which then will have people follow you. I think every single person that will listen, I tell them to read it or listen to it, because she does a great job of making sure that you can have people that will follow your vision, that you're able to communicate ideas effectively. So that is definitely my top favorite book. I will recommend it to every person. But yeah, what is yours? I'm curious.
There's a few that have been thrown around. I ask this question to every founder that comes on. I Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman is
Great
one. I actually think a lot about, there's one that's not related to entrepreneurship at all, but it's called The Psychology of Jazz. And it actually talks about the musical structure behind jazz and how it's related to physics. And it has nothing to do with entrepreneurship, being a founder, anything. But what it got me thinking about was how you take structures or information from one area of your life and be able to translate that into something else, right? I found myself doing that more and more as a founder, and thinking about, well, if our message is to democratize marketing education and marketing principles for smaller retailers, how do we take that from our marketing materials, translate that into a user experience, translate that into how I'm speaking with a potential hire, a customer, a potential tech partner. I find myself doing that more and more as a founder, and taking things I've learned or taking things I'm reading or digesting from one very, discrete area of life and applying it to another area of my business. So it's something that has nothing, again, to do with business or anything, but that book really has gotten me thinking on how you take lessons and information and translate it to other areas of your life to be more effective. So that's been my recommendation. Little technical, musically technical as well, but for those who are interested, that's a great book.
That's awesome. I mean, The Power of Vulnerability is not an entrepreneurship book either, but it definitely is something that I think about almost every day. So I think whatever resonates.
And certainly as an entrepreneur, you feel that vulnerability daily, right? I mean, you understand where there are gaps in your expertise, or where your business model could use some shoring up, or whatever it may be. So that's a terrific recommendation. I'll definitely check it out, and I know our listeners will as well. Our second question here, Aimee, what's one product or company that you're really excited about right now? And limiting factor, you can't say anything that you're currently working on.
Oh, darn. Okay.
We're making it tough on you.
Cool. That's a great question. So I definitely am really big in the e-commerce space right now. Anyone that's disrupting e-commerce, I'm just really fascinated with. So I don't know. That's a great question. I don't know. I think one of them I love, which I think they are very underrated, is Native. I think Native, which is a deodorant company, they were like, oh, the natural deodorant space is just like terrible. I mean, I wear it, I smell immediately. But they really, not only did they brand beautifully, partnered with Target, but their product works. And so another one that is similar is Spindrift. I think there's a wonderful article called How I Built It, or a wonderful podcast called How I Built This. They go in extreme detail about Spindrift. Definitely another area. I think the last one, which I really got a lot of inspiration for StreetTalk, was Duolingo. Duolingo, really, they were founded on monetizing data rather than selling advertisements. Of course, now we know they do advertisements for a variety of different reasons, but that founder is really, really fascinating. And he had such a cool story that everyone should check out. But I think those three, definitely Native, Duolingo, and Spindrift, those three are awesome.
Yeah, three terrific products and companies that are definitely hot right now. So great stories, as you mentioned, on branding and communicating the value prop, right? And enforcing it with the quality of the product itself. So, all right, Aimee, last question, the grand finale. If our listeners wanted to get in touch with you directly to discuss your journey as a founder or StreetTalk, tech development, whatever it may be, what's the best way for them to get in contact with you?
Yeah, feel free to message me on LinkedIn. My name's Aimee Venot, Aimee. Last name is Venot, V as in Victor, Enot. Or send me an email, same Venot or Aimee.Venot@gmail.com, and I'm sure I'll respond. I'd love to connect with you all, and thanks so much for having me, John. I really appreciate it. This was fun.
Absolutely, Aimee. Thank you so much for sharing your experience. I always, value our friendship and everything you taught me in the course of working together in the Founder Institute. So excited to have you on today. I know our listeners are as well, and can't wait to have you again on the show whenever you're free.
Love it. Sounds great. Love to be on it. Thanks so much.
Thanks again,
have
Aimee.
a good one.
Today's giveaway is actually a startup idea from one of the most creative ideation people I know, Mr. Brian Franklin. Brian has generously volunteered this idea as a starting point for an aspiring founder in our community to pick up and run with. Full disclaimer, there may be a similar product or service in the market that we're simply unaware of. If that's the case, this is not meant to be an infringement on anyone's intellectual property. So with that being said, let's set the stage. As of October 2020, there are more than 1 billion monthly active users on Instagram. 293 million users were between 18 and 24 years old, and 338 million were between 25 and 34 years old. 57 million US teens say that Instagram is their favorite social media platform, and these age groups are by far the most heavily influenced by the posts of other people their age. So what does this mean? There appears to be an opportunity in the market for a mobile app that integrates with Instagram and uses artificial intelligence to analyze your audience for the purpose of identifying and creating the optimal caption to use for your post. Gone are the days of trying to come up with the wittiest lines or the best emojis. This app can do it for you to increase your chances of going viral. So let me know what you think. Comment on our social media or send us an email at founderstrustpodcast@markettrust.io. Now get building.